Welcome everybody to Saskatoon Metro's Leadership Forum. Thank you very much for coming this evening. I'm Sheila Whalen and I'm here as a table officer with Saskatoon Metro and co-chairing with Robert Clipperton, and we are aided by our Sergeant in Command, Sean Bennett, who's covering some of the more technical details, including the stopwatch. We're very fortunate this evening to have both of our candidates here, both Carla Beck and Kaitlyn Harvey. This is a very important time for the party. It's a time for change and for growth. And so we all embrace this opportunity. I want to express appreciation on your behalf for the incredible commitment of our two very capable candidates. We can't overestimate, I don't think, the time, energy, and resources that are required of their participation. So thank you all for being here this evening, and I'll turn it over to Sean, who will do the treaty land acknowledgement.
All right, thank you, Sheila, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'd like to acknowledge this event is extended across Saskatchewan. Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, land of the Saulteaux, Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, Cree, Dene, and homeland of the Métis people. I put a lot of thought into what I would say for this tonight, and I've heard it is beneficial to connect it to something personal, and so it just doesn't remain abstract. And when I was reflecting on it, my thoughts always came back to my sister, who is a Cree woman, and I have the experience that many don't of growing up in a multiracial household like that. And one of the experiences I'm most grateful for is being able to know my step grandma, who was also a residential school survivor. And she was the most compassionate and loving person I've really ever met. And I bring all this up because it helped me learn early in life, you know, the importance of compassion and love. And you know, obviously it's not a fix for the past, and there's a lot to be done, but those are the fundamentals that we need to build our vision forward collectively and bring us together as a community and a family. And even if we have our disagreements, you know, if we can approach that in good faith and creating a truly mutual relationship, then I think that is the right path forward. And I will keep this brief for tonight. Thank you all, and in the spirit of that, I will hand it over to Robert.
Well, thank you, Sean. That was always enjoy watching the creativity and listening to what people have to say when it comes to the treaty land acknowledgements. I think as a group collectively, we're getting better at these all of the time. And I think it's great that we don't always have the same person doing the treaty land acknowledgements. Everybody's sort of taking their turn and learning the skill and also feeling the emotion that goes into it. So tonight we've got our two candidates here, and we're very pleased to have them with us this evening. The format for tonight is we're going to give each candidate 7 minutes of space to be able to present their positions, if you want to put it that way. Following that, we've got prepared questions that have come out of the planning committee. We've got 6 of those to tap various different areas. The candidates have seen those questions in advance, so they can have prepared their answers. And following those questions, we are going to invite questions from the floor. And I think maybe I'll save how we're going to do that. We want to assure that we've got a wide variety of questions, and we also want to assure that there's gender parity in terms of being able to pose the questions. We only have 20 minutes for that, so we're going to ask people to be brief in their posing the question, but I will address that perhaps again just before that question and answer period. Then each candidate will have 5 minutes for a closing statement, and then we'll wind up, and if there's any announcements, we will entertain those, and then we'll adjourn for the evening. Both of our candidates have other engagements tonight, so we hope to adjourn by the planned 8:30. So that said, we did a coin toss earlier, an electronic virtual coin toss earlier this evening. And so the first candidate who is going to speak is Carla Beck.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sheila. And thank you, Sean, for that very thoughtful acknowledgement. It's great to be here with all of you tonight. I want to acknowledge that I'm joining you from Treaty 4 territory in Regina, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And I reaffirm commitment to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations, beyond reconciliation to true collaboration. And it is great to join you virtually tonight, but I do have to admit that even after 2 years of almost daily Zoom meetings, I still have no great love of Zoom. I much prefer to see people in person when that's possible, but am thankful for the technology that allows us to gather this way, especially having just had COVID. I'm glad that we're able to share some time together today. And as I've said from the very beginning of this campaign, to build our party and to replace Scott Moe so we can actually deliver for people, it's going to take all the people that we can bring together, more ideas and more listening. So meetings like this really are an important part of that work. So many thanks to all of you and to the organizers tonight. To begin, I wanted to just share a few words about why I'm running to become the next leader of the Saskatchewan New Democrats, and importantly, how together we can replace Scott Moe. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up on a farm near Lang. My husband Guy and I have 3 children who really aren't children anymore. At least 2 of them are over 20, and the youngest just had her birthday on May 1st, our May Day baby. She's 16. Before being elected as an MLA in 2016 and 2020, I was twice elected to the Regina Public School Board. I was and still am a registered social worker. And every time that I've run, that I've built a team and won, I've done it because I wanted better. Better for my kids, but for all kids, for my family and all families, and better for our province. And that really is the reason that I'm running now. And I imagine that it's the reason that many of you here tonight are New Democrats and active in your communities. One thing I wanted to note before I got into further comments, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the news that we heard out of the United States last night. It makes me very sad and very angry. It's shocking and yet somehow not surprising at all. But I think what we saw happen and continue to see happen reminds us of 2 very important things. 1, we can never take any of our rights or our gains for granted. And 2, and this is very important, it matters who is in government. There's so much at stake and those decisions matter. The judges whose votes led to this draft decision were appointed by successive, very conservative presidents. Many of you will know women and non-binary folks in Saskatchewan already have way too little access to safe and appropriate healthcare. Safe access to women's healthcare, including abortion, is a basic right. But the Sask party seemed to think that the jury's still out on that. And it wasn't that long ago, and I don't have to remind anyone here, that in their leadership race, they pulled back the curtain on the truth behind their beliefs. And we're seeing that again in the federal Conservative Party too. Women must be able to choose what happens to their bodies without abuse, without intimidation, or barriers to access, period. So while we stand in solidarity with our friends in the US, we also need to stand vigilant against encroachments on the rights of women here at home. and even beyond that. The last couple of years have been especially tough. We all know people who are struggling in their own way. And I've done a lot of traveling, especially in the last couple of months, and talked with a lot of people. And I've met with leaders in communities right across this province, and I've seen it. I've also seen that people are tired of Scott Moe, this government, and they're taking us in the wrong direction, stoking division. People are looking for change. Our job as Saskatchewan New Democrats is to show that we are ready to be that change, that we're ready to build a team that can win, and we are ready to form government and ready to deliver that change that so many people are looking for. Some of you may have seen a couple of weeks ago, I held a live Zoom event and laid out my plan that basically comes down to these 3 steps: build, win, and deliver. Yes, of course, the plan also includes concrete strategies to protect the environment, to reverse privatization and invest in public services, to get reconciliation right, to rebuild in rural Saskatchewan, to make life more affordable, and an all of the above approach to creating and supporting good jobs in every sector. But fundamentally, we need to be clear. To make sure people right across our province get the help they need, from paying the bills to caring for their aging parents, and for us to get the future that we all deserve, we have to replace Scott Moe's Sass party in government. There's no other way. And no one is saying this is going to be easy. But growing up on the farm, I learned early to never be afraid of hard work. And I know you're no strangers to hard work either. Scott Moe and others will keep trying to push us apart by framing conversations as environment versus jobs, urban versus rural, social justice versus security. But we all know that we can't have any of these things without the other. Division is their way. We need to take a different path. Let's take climate change as an example. Without a willingness to build solutions together, we have the worst of both worlds: higher costs that few people can afford, and our emissions are still rising. Any plan on climate change that ignores working people is simply doomed to fail. We've seen it time and again. And any government strategy that ignores the reality of climate change is bad for all of us. And right now, we have no plan that anyone can have faith in. And if people don't believe in your plan, if you're not meeting with everyday people where they're at and bringing them along, we're doomed to fail. And we simply cannot afford to fail on the environment. To succeed and to meet all of the challenges and all of the opportunities that we face, we need to work together. That's why I'm running, and that's why I want to hear from you. That's why I want to keep building our party together. And that's why I know we need to win. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carla Beck. Now for the initial statement, I'm going to call on Carla Flogan to introduce Kaitlyn Harvey.
Thanks, Robert. Good evening, everyone. Just want to make sure you can hear me. Sound check. Excellent. Switching devices, always want to be sure. I met Kaitlyn, just about 2.5 years ago on the doorstep when she was running in Saskatoon, Willow Grove. And let me tell you, when I got that call, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to go out there. It's cold out. The person on the phone said, it isn't just anybody running in Willow Grove, because I had just heard the news someone was running. It's Kaitlyn Harvey. And that's how I felt for the last 2.5 years, is this Kaitlyn Harvey just has this ability to inspire and to influence people to want to do more, to be better, and to strive for, a better future for us all and for my kids. When I saw her on the doorstep talking to people, I went from, that couple hours I said I would commit to all of a sudden 2 hours a day for the last number of days of the run into the election. And so that's the kind of mobilization, connection, and inspiration that Kaitlyn will bring to this party. So she does do a whole bunch of things within the NDP. And in case you're not familiar with her, I'll do a little bit of a list here so she doesn't have to. She sits on 2 constituency association executives. She's treasurer for Westview. She's a Metro rep and also is on the governance and planning committee, and somehow convinced me to do that too, even though bylaws are not my thing. She's a provincial councillor, VP Métis of the Indigenous group. She's the MAL of Saskatoon West Federal EDA. And she also, I think I've met a lot of people that she inspired as VCO for Robert Doucette's campaign in the federal election recently. And so I think what I'm telling you is that what I see as a leader is someone who is visionary, someone who is a connector, and someone who is an organizer. And that's who we have in Kaitlyn Harvey. So it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Kaitlyn this evening.
Thanks so much for that introduction, Carla, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. And thanks for the land acknowledgement, Sean. I always appreciate hearing those, and when people deliver the land acknowledgement with a personal story, really drives home that commitment to reconciliation that we all need to be delivering. And I know that the party has been trying and doing lots of work and to reach out to Indigenous communities and Indigenous voters. But there's a lot of things that I believe we need to be doing differently, going beyond land acknowledgements, which are much appreciated, but to action, to inclusion. And how we do that as a party really needs to be reassessed. And as a province, how we engage with our Indigenous and non-Indigenous neighbors, newcomers to Canada. How do we include everybody in this vision for the future? For myself, I mean, I'm Métis. I've have that same experience as Sean, as being kind of seeing different worldviews, different experiences that really shape how you see things. And my background as a mediator and trained in research and legal analysis and comparative analysis, things like that. I'm always trying to see beyond the problem, to see what is it that's underlying this conflict, these issues, and how do we come up with the best deal possible, something that everybody can see themselves in this solution and want to be a part of the process and the outcome. And so, in working with the NDP, I see so much potential and so many amazing just people that care about their community so much. That's what drew me to the NDP and has kept me here, and why I'm running now. Our communities are suffering right now. Indigenous communities in particular, but everybody. The cost of living, our education system, healthcare, housing. There's so many issues that are just really pressing on us right now, and they are not going to get any better unless we do something drastically different. That is, the status quo is not working. We need to be putting forward a vision for Saskatchewan that talks about things like a fast transition to a renewable energy, that has a just transition, provides livable wages, meets people's needs, gives them transportation, gives them internet, gives them these basic things that people need to participate in a 2022 economy and prepare us for the future. Because our province is decades behind the rest of the world in terms of what we need to be doing to prepare. And our people are at risk beyond what a lot of people understand. And it is so concerning. It keeps me up at night. It keeps me coming to meetings, you know, trying to find ways to solve these problems. And there's so much potential in the NDP. And I am just so proud of all of the work that this party has done and all the work that it will do. And thank you for having me here tonight. I very much appreciate it.
Well, I think it's over to me, Robert. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to express my appreciation for the opening remarks from both of our candidates, and of course from Carla introducing Kaitlyn. Well done. Thank you. We're now going to move into the area of the prepared questions. As Robert Clipperton told you, these are questions that have been given to the candidates ahead of time, and they're in 6 different subject areas. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their response, and Sean Bennett is our timekeeper and will interject if he thinks we need to be doing that. Because we began after a coin toss with Carla Beck, we will start this time with Kaitlyn, and then we will alternate back and forth with each question. And we'll begin with the first question then. And it concerns party. We're feeling a shift out there as dissatisfaction with the Sask party government grows among sectors of our society. What 3 things does the Saskatchewan NDP need to do to convince the voter that we are poised and ready to champion their concerns and form government in 2024? And we'll start with Kaitlyn.
Thanks, Sheila. 3 things that really stand out to me. First thing is we need to give people something to vote for. We've really struggled as a party to connect with voters and lost members and, you know, and losing seats. We need to do things differently. And in my research and my practice, I know that we don't have a whole lot of time to do this and to do it well. We're running out of time. The time to transition is now. And I'm not the only one who knows this. A lot of our youth in particular, people know that this is not okay. And they want a government that takes climate change seriously and isn't propping up the fossil fuel industry and isn't afraid to say enough is enough. People want to see that in a leader. They want to see that in a party that's taking climate change as seriously as they are and their kids are. I've spoken to several different classes over the years in my work, some of my volunteer work with the Climate Justice Saskatoon, and talking to kids, high school kids, they are scared. They are worried. You know, they're trying to think of what do they want to be when they grow up? And it's really hard to do that when you are reading the news and you're hearing what's going on and you think the world is gonna burn, you know, it's gonna flood and sink and all of these awful things. It's really hard as a kid to think of how you're going to have hope and be part of this society that you just see as, you know, is flawed. It's not sustainable. It's not right. Things need to change. And we aren't, sorry?
10 seconds, sorry.
10 seconds. Okay. Second thing, build capacity within our constituency associations. And third, ensure Indigenous peoples are part of the process.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. And now we'll turn it to Carla Beck.
Thank you for the question. There definitely is a shift out there. Even since the last election, people are looking for change. And as I've said, we need to show people that we're ready to be that change. I think the first way is we meet people where they're at, both physically and at the ideas level. We can't guess what it is that people want. We have to go in and physically get in front of them, be out on the road, building, especially in those communities and with those folks that we've identified that we need in order to win the next election. We need to listen to people. We want to invite people in to be part of the solutions, and we cannot be seen as telling people what's good for them or talking down to them. I do believe that there is so much that we agree on. There's so much common so many common values and New Democrat values that are still out there. But we have to work from that connection of the things that we agree on, and invite people in to build and be part of the solutions. And we need to build the party, grow memberships, raising money, looking for candidates. I know there have been people who've already approached me looking to wanting to run for us in 2024, rebuilding at the constituency level. So many things that are already happening within our party. We need to continue to do to build for this reason. And it really comes down to this. I mean, all of the things, the urgency of climate change, all of those things are so important. We will not get to make the decisions unless we win the next election. And that's going to take, as we've said, a lot of listening, a lot more ideas, and a lot more people. That's where I would put the focus.
Okay, thank you both very much for that first question. And we'll now turn to jobs and the economy. And the question is, the Saskatchewan government has claimed to be good for business in the province. Well, we wrote this while keeping the minimum wage at the lowest in the country. What should a Saskatchewan NDP government do to support the working person and promote a thriving economy in Saskatchewan? And we'll begin this time with Carla Beck.
Mm-hmm. This is the story they tell, but it defies the reality and the history of this province. We have to get out there and tell our own story, first of all. We need an all of the above approach to creating good jobs and to growing our economy in every sector: public, private, natural resources, renewables, tech, new industries. We really do have a story to tell here. And only part of that story is being told by the Sask Party. Saskatchewan was the only province that saw its economy actually shrink last year. And far too long, as many of you will know, the Sask Party has claimed that they're the ones who hold the conversation when it comes to the economy, but that doesn't meet up with the reality. We need to be clear that we support workers in every sector and that we support good jobs. We need to make sure that communities have confidence that we support their communities and that we have the ability to attract more investment and more people to our province. I think of allowing people who do come to our province, choose to come to our province, to be able to contribute to the full extent of their skills and talents by looking at improving our credential recognition, and also restoring the family class in Saskatchewan of the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. A conversation I just had today with someone who said that would just help us attract the workers and the investment that we need to our province, and that's a commitment we've made. Restoring balance to labor laws. One of the first things this government did was upend the protections that NDP governments had built over years to protect working people, to protect the right to unionize. We've committed to $15 an hour minimum wage right away, and paid sick leave in the first budget.
And time.
Thank you, Carla. And we'll turn now to Kaitlyn Harvey's response to that question.
Thanks, Sheila. Our businesses in Saskatchewan have done really well this year. I was reading an article earlier today that Nutrien, that's based out of Saskatoon, reported record net earnings of $1.4 billion in the first 3 months of 2022, and that their the full year adjusted earnings could range from between $14.5 to $16.5 billion for Nutrien. And when we're looking at the amount of money that some of these corporations are making compared to what Saskatchewan workers are making, it's so, like, it's mind-blowingly, the disparity between the two is, it needs to change. So one of the things that we're saying is that we need to start making sure that there are legislative protections to ensure that workers have the financial supports that they need to be part of this transition. And so, you know, this increase in minimum wage that the Sask Party announced today it's missing the mark by about $6.75 about what it should be. There's some stats that came out from Canadian Centre Policy Alternatives that from 2016 saying that we should have a minimum wage of about $16, you know, from 2016. So right now it should be almost $20 an hour adjusted for inflation. So the Sask Party's approach to minimum wage it's not fair. And you look at the rate of increase in earnings that our MLAs are getting, it compared to what people working in different businesses, the frontline workers, it's not proportionate, and people cannot afford to pay for transportation, to pay for gas. We need to make sure that there is a just transition, and we need to make sure that our people are put first in that regard.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the third question on climate and energy. Lauren Calvert recently told about the best way to prompt change towards renewables. It was having the will to push it through. Given that same enthusiasm, how should a Saskatchewan NDP government transform our provincial energy grid? And we'll begin with Kaitlyn.
Well, first, you know, we need to make sure that people understand that we are in a climate emergency. Our per capita greenhouse gas emissions are among the highest in the world, and they are not on track to be reduced by the amount that they need to be by 2030. If we're being serious about climate change and we want to keep global emissions to 1.5 degrees increase, we need to reduce our emissions by 45% by 2030. That's the number that we've been given, and we are nowhere near on track. And so we need to be putting forward a completely different approach to our energy development and transportation. We need local energy development and local solutions, local jobs. We need to make sure that the energy that we are producing, we are able to use in a way that is sustainable. You know, what the amount of emissions that we have coming out of coal, for example, that needs to end as soon as possible. And we need to make sure that people understand that this is not a personal attack. You know, as some people really feel that this transition to a green economy is going to take away something from them. And we have to be clear that this is not taking away, this is giving you a better life. This is giving your kids a livable future. This is giving people hope. And we need to do whatever it takes to get that done, and we need to do it now. And so with that, having mandatory measures, we need legislation that requires people to do what is required to reduce emissions. And we need to make sure that people know what the plan is, and so that they're not resistant and they're part of creating that future.
Thank you, Carla, or rather Kaitlyn. We'll turn to Carla for her answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, we need a plan going into the future, and we need to be a part of the emissions reductions. The reality is that traditional energy is going to be with us in the short term and the medium term. And as long as there is demand for oil and gas, we should seek to meet that demand with oil and gas produced in Saskatchewan and use that revenue from those sectors to invest in the future. And while we're doing that, we really do have so much potential to ramp up our renewable power production here in Saskatchewan. We can invest in retrofitting homes and buildings and businesses all across the province and create thousands of jobs while reducing our emissions. When I was a school board trustee, it always irked me that we didn't put solar panels on all of our schools that, you know, sit empty in July and August, right when they could be generating the most power. And also, provide the ability to reduce power costs for school boards. Tremendous potential in our province to be a leader in wind and solar, geothermal and hydro, things that the Sask Party isn't interested in. In fact, the Premier has said he doesn't care, simply doesn't care. He's going to keep making decisions in the best interest of those folks who give him money, folks from Calgary. In order to actually implement any of these approaches, we have to work with the traditional sectors, work with all folks in this province to allow them to see themselves as part of the solutions and to actually be able to change the government and deliver these solutions. As I said, the path that we are on, the path that we've got, this division with the Sask Party at the helm will continue until we are able to change government and actually be able to make these decisions.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the fourth prepared question in the area of truth and reconciliation. Recognizing that significant system-wide changes are necessary to effectively respond to many of the truth and reconciliation calls to action, what should be the top 3 priorities upon the Saskatchewan NDP forming government? And we'll begin with Carla Beck's answer.
Thank you, Sheila. First of all, we should be looking to implement the calls to action in the TRC that are directed at the province, including UNDRIP. This is very important. One of the things that I've heard people, frustrated with, consultation. There was so much that went into the consultation here. These calls to action are there to be implemented, and this government has shown really no interest in doing that. That would be a commitment from a government that I led. The other piece would be the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, the calls for justice. We need to implement all of those calls for justice directed at the province. Right now, a big one as well is fixing Saskatchewan's duty to consult policy and stopping the sale of Crown land. We're seeing a fire sale of Crown land in this province. The duty to consult policy is broken and needs to be fixed. I know Betty Nippy-Albright has continuously been standing up in the House calling for these changes. But you can still go to the government website and sign up to take a piece of Crown land. This is urgent, as well as the government. It seems very proud, increasing logging last year by 30% in the province. Watching those trucks move from the north, going to Big River. Moving logging cabins, trapping cabins off the land in order to facilitate that. It's urgent and is one of the first things we would need to do.
Thank you, Carla, and we'll turn to Kaitlyn Harvey for her answer.
Thank you, Sheila. Top 3 priorities. We need to implement the UNDRIP in Saskatchewan. That just it goes without saying. The British Columbia NDP have developed their provincial legislation. It's lacking, but it is a step in the right direction. And Saskatchewan really needs the same thing. I can appreciate the desire to fix the duty to consult process, to create legislation that will address racism, things like that. But really what we need to do is we need to take an UNDRIP lens, a true reconciliation lens to all of our laws and policies in Saskatchewan. We know that the system that we have right now is a colonialist system. Saskatchewan, and Saskatoon, Regina, these big cities, they came out of colonies. They came with law from Europe. They came with the common law system and imposed it on Indigenous people. And we we have all of these problems in our society right now because you've got this imposition of law and culture and beliefs on another people who have a different worldview. And so until you're giving people that right to determine for themselves how to live, how to have that dignity, those cultural and historical and spiritual connections with themselves and their communities, you're going to continue to have conflict. And so if you look at, say, for Quebec, civil law system, they operate within a common law system of Canada, and that works. Canada can be a legal pluralist society. Saskatchewan doesn't extend that same right to Indigenous people. We need to be allowing people to have equal participation in decision-making processes.
Thank you. We'll turn to our fifth question in the area of healthcare. Healthcare has come under the microscope during COVID, reinforcing the call for significant changes to the delivery of healthcare. Do you agree that we need across-the-board changes to improve healthcare services and accessibility across Saskatchewan? And how should a Saskatchewan NDP government approach the task? And we'll go first to Kaitlyn Harvey.
Yes, I agree. We need changes across the board. But more than that, we need to change the culture of how healthcare is implemented across the province. Doctors, nurses, and staff have all been burnt out by the pandemic, and there's been little done to support them, including removing public health measures that keep the community healthy and shuffling staff around endlessly. We need to have rural access to healthcare that isn't continually stripped by our government. The closure of hospitals and getting rid of the STC really impacted a lot of people in this province who used to be able to take the bus to get to their medical appointments. So when people don't have access to healthcare in their home communities, and they have no way of getting it in the cities, and they have no internet to be able to participate in online appointments, it's just putting people in a position where they are either going to go without care or they're going to go longer without care. And then when they need it, they're going to be that much worse off. And then they're having to go out of their community, and you're putting people more and more pressure onto the hospitals and the clinics that we do have. And it's pushing us beyond that breaking point. I know for myself, to try to get an appointment with my doctor, it's over a month wait list. And it's just getting longer and longer. And we're not giving our doctors and our healthcare workers the supports that they need. And if we make this province a place where doctors and nurses and people want to live, maybe we're not going to have such a decline in the ability to provide these services, but we're not supporting our communities. And so then we're not going to have the same ability to provide those services.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. We'll turn to Carla Beck for her answer.
Definitely, we need to be focusing on the healthcare system. Despite what the first Sask Party line is that you hear in most conversations, this is a government that in the last 15 years has not reopened any of the facilities that they closed or converted. And in fact, on any given weekend in this province right now, there are 10 to 12 additional healthcare centers in rural Saskatchewan that are closed due to short staffing. We need to invest in services to end that short staffing and reopen those rural facilities that the Sask Party has closed. Another piece is to reversing the privatization that the Sask Party has brought in with diagnostics and surgeries, and put a stop to any further expansion. This is an old playbook: create a crisis, make people concerned about how you're going to deliver these services, and privatize. And we've seen this time and time again. We have to have a full commitment to deliver healthcare through the public system. We need to look at scope of practice, LPNs, nurse practitioners in rural Saskatchewan, paramedics, pharmacists. We had a really good conversation recently out in Melfort. We've got a great system of delivering healthcare there, including surgeries that aren't even done in some of the cities. But if there is a doctor that needs to go attend in an ambulance to take someone to Prince Albert or into Saskatoon, that really closes down what they were doing in the hospital. We should be looking at having advanced care paramedics to be able to do that. These solutions are there at the local level, but we've got a government who isn't listening. I remember talking very recently to the Mayor of Lanigan, very concerned about the hospital in their community. You know, they had solutions, including incentivizing for young people from the community who wanted to work in healthcare in their community. They had a government that wasn't listening. Those solutions are out there. We need to look at the commitment and reconfiguring how these services are delivered in rural Saskatchewan to actually meet the needs and not meet, you know, talking points, or worse, not meet the end goal of privatizing further our public healthcare system.
Thank you. We're going to turn to our last question, and it's in the area of housing. What should a Saskatchewan NDP government do to best handle the multitude of problems around housing from supply to pricing? Mm-hmm. And we begin with Carla Beck.
Yeah, well, the first thing that needs to happen immediately is to reverse the SIS program that we see that has exacerbated the housing crisis and seen a lot of people who were housed homeless because of those really ill thought out changes. And you know, you could forgive a government that you know makes a change they didn't know about, but everyone from landlords to every group in the province was telling them this was a terrible idea, and unfortunately that's been realized. Looking at the current public housing stock that we have in the province, in most communities, you have 20 or more % of the Sask housing units that are not being used right now. This is inexplicable and something that needs to be fixed. We need to also ensure that people that are housed currently have jobs that enable them to continue to pay the bill. As I mentioned before, we have 3 times the national average in mortgages and arrears. Any door knocking afternoon will net you folks who are saying they're struggling to pay their bills, maybe paying power 1 month and energy another. This is all to the stagnant wages that we see, coupled with inflation that we see in the province right now. Right now, we see interest rates rising. You know, that will cut into people's ability to pay their bills unless we do address the crisis in wages that we have right now. And getting off this boom and bust cycle. When I was managing at the shelter, I remember the first 2 years we were there, there were 1,000 women and children on the wait list, largely due to the fact that so many of the houses in Regina were filled with people who had been brought in from out of province to work on the bypass.
Thank you both very much to our committed candidates. I think some of these areas we could wax on about for hours, so well done. And I'll turn it now over to Robert.
I don't think Kaitlyn had the chance to answer the housing question.
You know, I have to confess, it's my 46th wedding anniversary, and I'm so anxious to get on with it, but I'm sorry. I was thinking about that. Over to Kaitlyn.
Hey, thanks, Sheila. You know, when it comes to housing, for myself, I live with my mom. My kid and I live with my mom because I went to school as a single mom, and I wouldn't be able to afford to live on my own. I have so much debt. If it weren't for low-income housing programs, I wouldn't have been able to go to school. But even with all of the supports that we were given, it still put me into so much debt that the reality of me buying a home anytime soon it's just not even something that I'm considering. And, you know, when you look at the cost of rent and insurance, it's really hard right now for homeowners to be able to make sure that they are looking after the property in ways that that they're going to have their insurance obligations satisfied. So I'm helping my mom. When I live with her, I do the clearing the snow to make sure it doesn't flood, getting snow off the roof to make sure we don't have ice damming. We've got a lot of people in our communities that don't have a kid that can come in, help them with housework. And what supports are we giving to people to help them stay in their homes? Not a whole lot. And so we need to make sure that people who are in their homes can afford to stay there and have the supports that they need to make sure that they can maintain their properties. And then we have to be able to give students and parents places that they can raise their families in that's safe and stable, and that they can continue to work or go to school and not be forced to go into debt. Everyone deserves stable housing. We have to make sure that the cuts to low-income assistance programs are reversed, absolutely. We need to make sure we have housing strategies for people waiting on remand, for people who are in their communities and taken out of their communities, to be to give people options that are culturally appropriate, as well as financial opportunities for people who have different capacities. Sorry, I went over time.
You're muted there, Sheila.
I just want to say thank you, Kaitlyn. I put you on the back foot, but it didn't show in your answer. Now I'll turn it over to my capable co-chair, Robert Clipperton.
Well, I hope he's capable. I'm not feeling too capable with this. So our next spot is questions from the floor, and we want to assure two things. We want to assure gender parity in terms of people who ask questions. And secondly, we want to be sure that we have a variety of topics, which means as little overlap as possible in the 6 core questions we asked already. So here's how we're going to do this. We're not going to put up our hands to do this. We're going to put your question in the chat, and then we're going to call upon you to ask your question. And so that way and please correct me from the floor if for some reason I'm ignoring gender parity. And or if you say, yeah, we already had a question on that topic, I'm going to hopefully Sean and Sheila will assist in monitoring my behavior on this one. And I'm going to ask people to be as brief as possible with their asking their questions. So there's all very fine to have introduction, but let's avoid any kind of grandstanding. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer each question, and Sean will do the timekeeping. And so I see a question from okay, I'm going to start with Bob Eaton has a question. And Bob, ask your question.
Sure. So this is to both people. Given there is no definition, no job definition for the leader in our party, what do you think your job will be?
Okay, so we'll start with, I think Kaitlyn will be the one to answer first.
Oh, thanks for the question, Bob. Well, you know, until I get a seat, I have the freedom to go everywhere and anywhere that I want within the province. And I plan to do that full time and be using the time that I have to connect with communities, to do that outreach, to be bringing people into the party, getting candidates to run in all constituencies, and making sure that they have the supports that they need from now until 2024. We talked about a 365 campaign, but we're not able to fulfill on those promises, but objectives. We don't have the capacity. We need more people power. And so I'm going to go and get those people. I'm an organizer. I'm very involved with my different communities that I'm a part of. I know there's a lot of people who want to participate in something that deals with climate change seriously, that deals with Indigenous issues seriously. And if they have a platform, a leader that is saying, let's get to work, what do you need to get this done, and is committed as I am, as I've been working on these issues for almost 2 decades, I'm very confident in my ability to get people to come into the party, take on these leadership roles, get them trained, get them the supports that they need, and then get them into the legislature in 2024.
Okay, thank you. Carla.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the role of leader isn't defined. And I think in a way that's important, because different people will have different leadership styles. If I thought that this was a role that one person would just become a figurehead and attract people to the party, I don't think you would have gotten me in the race. It was a comment I made before the last leadership as well. If we are waiting for a white knight on a horse to save us all, that's not something that I think is terribly realistic. What I do know, my strength is being able to build teams, to work from connection and bring people together authentically. You know, I live in this world. I think that we're looking to the team that we're looking to build. You know, raised my kids in the city, grew up in rural Saskatchewan. My dad's an outfitter. You know, my husband works for a public sector union. The values that I hold, the values that we hold as a party, are still present out in rural Saskatchewan. They're present with working class folks. They're present in all communities in this province. We have to meet people where they're at, connect with them, build trust, and invite them in. Tell our own story. For too long, what people know about us as the Saskatchewan NDP is what the Sask Party told them. And until we build that trust, you know, they're not listening. I found it so powerful just going out and talking to people. Like I said, we've been right around the province already. The power of sitting down with people, looking them in the eyes and looking for connection, and building. It really is the project that I see in front of us right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Trina Miller.
Hi. So my question has to do with rural Saskatchewan. And we know that there is no path to holding current government without winning some rural seats, which we have none right now. So with the long-standing decline in rural Saskatchewan, and that's not just farms, because in my question I had said with family farms, but it's also towns, villages, people on acreages. There's so much more to rural than just farms, although farms are part of it. Can you outline your plan to reinvest and reinvigorate rural Saskatchewan?
Okay, and think we start with Boy, did we start with Carla on this one?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Trina. You know, one of the first pieces there is connectivity. The ability that we've seen even over the last 2 years with the pandemic has really jump-started how we believe the ability to work from home. And I think that that's something that could be taken advantage of if that connectivity was more consistent in rural Saskatchewan. Connectivity also with the reintroduction of a publicly delivered transportation system is very important. Allows people to perhaps continue to live in rural Saskatchewan when they age or have don't have access to a vehicle. That's very important. Also, the delivery of goods. Looking at the ability to age in place, be that in rural Saskatchewan or urban Saskatchewan, you know, really does benefit folks who want to stay in their town, but maybe for want of some supports to enable them to stay in their homes, would look at moving into the cities. And as you mentioned, you know, there are farmers, of course, still out in rural Saskatchewan, and that's an important part of the industry out there, but it's not the only thing. We see a lot of folks who work in schools, in healthcare, in retail out in rural Saskatchewan, looking at how we deliver services in rural Saskatchewan and reimagining that to actually meet the needs of folks working out there, I think is very important. And of course, jobs. People go where the jobs are. So investing in those industries in rural Saskatchewan is very, very important. And then folks can take advantage of the housing, the relatively modest housing costs out in rural Saskatchewan if they're able to be employed out there. And a lot of these solutions are to be found at within those communities. You know, being at SUMA, being at SARM, there's a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Kaitlyn.
Yeah, how we connect with rural communities, Indigenous communities, people who are outside of urban centers really needs to change. The lack of access to internet and to public transportation is it's not fair. It's not right. We need to make sure that people who live in all parts of this province have cell coverage, have internet, the ability to get from city to city without having to depend on someone else for a vehicle, or not travel because they can't afford it. We need to be providing transportation options that are realistic for people, that are accessible. And for, when we're talking about a transition to a different type of economy, where we have local energy development, we've got local food development, we've got things that people can bring into their communities to create jobs. We can have those be meeting people's needs where they're at. We don't have to force people to drive into the city to get groceries. If we have local gardens, community gardens, greenhouses, we've got the ability to develop, for example, geothermal. A geothermal plant you can build in 2 years, and that can power 20,000 homes with zero emissions. Think of all of the jobs that could be built around a geothermal plant, including greenhouses. There's so many exciting things that are being done in other places that incorporate renewable energies and local jobs, and including meeting education needs and connecting seniors with children in local settings, providing everybody with opportunities to build community in sustainable ways.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, Anas.
Thanks, Robert. This is a question for both of the candidates. If you were to be chosen as leader, what are your plans in relation to immigration, newcomers, and visible minority groups? What kind of policies would you push for in the legislature, and how we will prioritize and support these groups? Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. We start with Kaitlyn.
Thanks for the question, Anas. We really need to be changing our requirements for immigrants to come to our province. Right now, the requirement to speak English and the requirement to have a job offer before coming here is it limits people's ability to come to our province and then participate effectively in the economy once they get here. There's so much potential when people come here. They've got other experiences, other ideas, other skills, ways of seeing the world, and there's so much potential that we need to be supporting people who come here to say, look, like we're trying to do things differently. What do you think? How can we include your knowledge and your skills and your background and your culture and make this a vibrant place that everybody sees themselves in? And when we are talking about making sure that our communities are reconciled, we need to be looking at all peoples and making sure that all peoples have what they need to be treated fairly, to have dignity, to have equal opportunities to participate in our economy. And right now they don't. And so that needs to change.
Okay, thanks, Carla.
Yeah, one of the first things that we can and should do is to reintroduce the family class in the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. This was brought in by the Calvert government in the later days of the Calvert government, and really was the push initially that saw this province move over 1 million people. It not only allowed people to bring their families to Saskatchewan and help sponsor their families to be here, it also sent a very important signal about the value of immigrants to our province. And when it was taken away in 2012 by the Sask Party, I think you can see the outmigration from our province starting very, very strongly at that point. Looking at credentials, improving how credentials from other countries are recognized in Saskatchewan is a really, really important part here. If we look at the crisis that we have in healthcare and in other industries, the fact that we allow, such a lag or so many hoops to be put in place for people to actually practice in the field that they're trained really is not anything that's defensible. And another thing that I would like to see that I think would really help attract and retain people to this province is looking at tuition, and specifically the fact that those who pay tuition out of country tuition pay 3 times what domestic students pay at our universities. Again, this is one of those things that's materially important, but also sends a very strong signal to folks who are looking at our province from out of country. This is something we've talked recently with students about, and they acknowledge that Saskatchewan often isn't their first choice when they're coming to school here for that reason. So those are 3 things that we could do immediately that would have a big impact.
Okay, thanks very much. To keep on schedule and allow our candidates to get out of here by 8:30 to on to other commitments, we've got time for one more question. And with gender parity, I'm going to hand it to Claire Card. Claire, are you there?
Yes, it wasn't letting me unmute there for a second. So my question is on nuclear energy. So for the candidates, do you support the building of small modular nuclear reactors in Saskatchewan? If no, explain your answer. But if yes, explain how nuclear energy is compatible in an energy grid powered with a mixture of renewable energy.
Okay, in 2 minutes, Carla Beck.
Well, I'm one of the things, and you may have heard that I've talked about this before in various Zoom calls. First of all, there is an urgent need, as we've established, to renew our energy grid in the province. And I think that there's an urgency as well in terms of the impacts that we're seeing with climate change. So I think that there's agreement there. What I have said is that I wouldn't rule it out from the outset. But again, this is part of the building the solutions together. It's, there are a number of aspects you have to look at. What's the cost? How long will it take? What's the environmental impact? How much energy will it create? What jobs will it create? What will we do with waste? And I think, that's, again, how I envision finding solutions is pulling us off these divisive arguments that we do see in our party that really, it has been what Scott Moe counts on. They look for these divisive issues to keep folks divided, both us and with the federal government. I think those are some of the questions that would have to be solved and answered, Claire, before we'd pursue any any of these options. Yeah, what I've said is I wouldn't rule it out, but if it didn't meet any of those measures, or there were other forms of energy that would be more effective, would be more timely, and would have less risk, then we would look at those.
Okay, thank you. Kaitlyn?
From the last time I checked, we are still maybe about a decade or more away from having the technology to have small modular reactors mass produced. And whether or not we can do anything with the waste, I don't think that question has been solved yet. So to me, when we're looking at the amount of energy that we need as a province, we can meet our needs with renewables very easily. If we are needing more energy, it's because we want to mine more. And so who actually benefits from the energy that that we're having to create, to generate from nuclear? I don't think it stays with Saskatchewan people. And if we are putting our money and all our eggs in the nuclear basket, that is maybe 15 years down the road as something that might be safe and effective, I think that's a very unwise decision. 15 years from now is going to be too late to make a difference. We have the money right now, we have the capacity, we have the ability to invest in renewables, and the nuclear debate is not something that I think we need to entertain right now. And if people are entertaining it, it's because of looking at the amount of money we could make from exporting the uranium. I don't see any other reason for developing nuclear, because as a province, we don't have that high of an energy demand. Other provinces, other countries, they have higher populations, they have higher needs. Do we develop nuclear for them? I don't think we need to. We have so many other alternatives. So let's focus our time and our money and our energy on those solutions that are not going to dig up the land and pollute communities and have no potential solutions for dealing with the waste. Until we can solve that problem, I don't see why we're even considering it.
Okay, and that's the end of our Q&A from the floor. Awesome questions in the chat. I went through and thought, oh, that's a great question. Gee, I wish we had more time for that. I've learned two things tonight by watching how we're doing this, and I'm stymied for both of them. I don't have answers that I'm going to look into. So just for those people who may be irate and offended, I don't know how we do the gender parity thing when we've got non-binary people. And for accessibility, writing your question into the chat, it is not possible for people who don't have the vision to be able to do that. And I guess I can also say, I think Adele Oakland is here on the phone. And I don't know how she would have managed either. So we're going to work on those things, and hopefully as a party we'll get better. Okay, I'm going to now, we've got room for each candidate to give a closing statement, and we'll start with Kaitlyn Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. And thanks again for organizing this event and for everybody who is here this evening. I've really enjoyed my time with Metro over the last couple of years. Just really grateful for the community that I have built with this group of people and the mentors within the organization. There's so much potential within this party. And if we're working together, we can build the province that we want. If we're putting forward a plan that people can see themselves in, they will vote for us. And I have been working in this area in climate change, in criminal law, in negotiation, mediation for a very long time. And I know that we can do it. If we focus on the problem and stop focusing on each other and just get to work, we can do it. But we are running out of time, and I can't stress that enough. And I'm sorry if I get a little bit passionate when I'm talking about these things because it is so pressing. And I can't stress that enough. And so we really need to come together and just get to work. We put our differences aside, support one another. And, you know, regardless of the outcome of this race, climate change is still going to be an issue on June 27th. And we have a lot of work to do as NDPers, as citizens in this province, as parents. We need to push the envelope and demand a better future for our kids because they need us to. This is our problem. This is our time. And we have to take this opportunity while we have it. So thank you for listening to me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Thanks very much, Kaitlyn. And Carla.
Thank you, Robert. Well, that just flew by. I do want to thank everyone for your questions and for your obvious commitment to our party and to the future. It's been good conversation, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I know that there'll be more opportunity before the leadership convention and, of course, before the next election. A couple of days ago, I had the chance to sit in Vicky's backyard for a Fairview executive meeting. And that's where Kaitlyn and I actually got to meet for the first time in person. And I was thinking about this on the way home, that well-fought by-election gave the people of Fairview an exceptional representative and added another person to our caucus. And that really was a special time for me. It was just about 5 years ago, and we really were on a bit of a roll. We had, it was the second year in a row. We had won 3 by-elections. We were slowly rebuilding. And many of you at that time, and I recognize some of the folks on the call today, we came together and we put our eyes on the prize, and we showed that we could build our party and we could win again. Now, things have changed since then, you know, many things in the last 2 years, but Vicky has continued to be an exceptional MLA and even grew her support in the last election. And I think, and the reason I'm talking about this is I think we can build back that feeling of momentum. We can bring it back in urban centers. We can bring it back in rural communities. And I'm committed to that. I'm a proud New Democrat, and I have and always will stand with activists, with leaders, with community members fighting for a better world. And I know that to make all of those things a reality, we need to reach beyond the people that we already know, beyond the people who already agree with us. And we need to keep reaching out and doing the work and meeting people where we're at. We need to keep connecting, bringing people in and building with them. And it's the only way I've ever known to build lasting solutions. And it's exactly what I've done my whole life. And it's what we've started doing this campaign. We've been approached by people who haven't seen themselves in our party for a very long time, and sometimes even ever. And they're excited by the very real chance that we have to replace the Sask party. And I believe that we have that chance. And you know what? They're excited by the idea that we can build a better world and actually deliver the change that we're looking for. When they see that they can be part of building a better future, the future we all want for our kids and for our province, with good jobs, clean air and clean water, strong communities where people can afford to live, and more equity and justice for everyone. We can deliver on that promise. In our party and our province, we have a proud history of punching above our weight. We're known for looking out for our neighbors and finding the solutions to the challenges we face with pragmatism, cooperation, and plain old hard work. Tommy Douglas just didn't say dream no little dreams. He and New Democrat governments after him, they made those big dreams a reality. Public hospitals and Medicare, Bill of Rights, or Crown corporations. We cleaned up the books after years of conservative corruption. We brought dental care directly to kids in schools and made pre-kindergarten a reality. It was New Democrats who literally paved the roads and turned on the lights across Saskatchewan. We brought people together and built for the future. And I know this. Together, we can do it again. I hope you'll join me as we reach out to everyone in Saskatchewan, no matter where they live, no matter how long they or their family have called this province and these lands home. And yes, even no matter who they voted for in the last election. If we keep building together, I am convinced we can win and put ourselves back in a position to deliver, actually deliver that change for Saskatchewan people. And that is the focus of my leadership campaign. It will be my goal as leader, and it will be the result in the next election. I do hope you'll join us, because I have to tell you, stronger together isn't just a slogan. I genuinely believe that it's true. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carla, and thank you very much, Kaitlyn. I got 3 announcements, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sheila for announcements and a wind up. First announcement is we're exactly on time. Like, what are the chances, right? 8:25, that's exactly where we're supposed to be when I have to say what I'm doing now. Just want to remind you, Saskatoon Metro, it does have an education policy function on the 25th of this month on with Darren Coleman on Saskatchewan Economy 2.0. So that should be interesting. The Metro AGM is on June 15th, and we'll have both candidates back and they can answer some questions. Sheila will probably address the membership thing. And so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Yes, I am going to address membership because it's important to all of us and important to our candidates in particular. If you haven't got a membership, or if you need to renew it, the deadline is May 6th. And the ideal thing is to go online and do it to the Sask NDP website. If you put your check in the mail May 6th, it won't get there in time. So please renew your membership so that you will have an opportunity to vote for the next leader of this party. And our leadership convention is on June 26th. It will be in person, it will be live streamed, and it's important that we have a really good turnout to show the rest of this province how much we care about this party and the future of this province. There's early bird registration, and the deadline for that is May 31st. So you want to watch that because it's about, let's see, $52.50 for a regular ticket. And right now there's an unwaged seniors and fixed income unwaged, which is half of that. And then it will go up after May 31st to about $35 and $70 respectively. This has been a tremendous evening. I'm feeling invigorated. I'm feeling hopeful. We have 2 fabulous candidates, a wonderful level of commitment. And I want to thank you for attending. I want to thank you for your participation this evening and in the future on behalf of this party and the people of this province. And a shout out to the campaign teams. Both of our candidates are backed by some really genuine, hardworking, committed New Democrats. And they don't necessarily get a lot of praise for their work, but I want them to know that we care about that. Thank you to my co-chair, Robert. Thank you to Sean Bennett for your assistance this evening. And thank you to our candidates. Have a good evening, all of you. Take care.